You are wave and students. And then we have support from our past chair, Lisa Lachuga, at Kitsap Regional Library, Leif Wagner, who is with Bremerton Housing Authority, Carl Board with Kitsap County, and Katie Knudsen with the HEN program, Madison Rose, and Madison, you can correct me, but how do you pronounce your last name?
It's actually Tuttle now. I got married, so you don't have to worry about pronouncing Rozak anymore.
We could change that, but she's with that Homes of Compassion and our newest member. So thank you all for your help. Again, we meet at the first Wednesday of the month at 9 a.m. If anybody wants to join, help facilitate anything, organize anything, there's always lots to do. So thank you all for everyone's support. So our next item on the agenda is our minutes approval. So let me see. Just a little section, see if I can find the minutes. So we had a meeting in January, and it was really a recap of Project Connect. But I'm gonna show the meeting minutes, and then we're going to have somebody motion to approve them and somebody to second it. So just a second. Kind of some formalities. And we try to put these on our website and some and then in the newsletter prior to this meeting. So I'm going to scroll really slowly through the minutes. Thank you to Emily Larson for taking these for us. So of course, here's an introduction kind of similar to what we did with the executive committee introduction. We talked about a community builder. We had some updates from the organization. We had a point in time overview and a Project Connect Q&A. So of course, since then we've had Project Connect, so thank you all for joining us for that. And then some following questions. So I'm just gonna scroll slowly, but I appreciate if I can get a motion to approve. You are all members, by the way, by being here.
I move to approve, Katie. This is Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
And this is Bridget. I'll second it.
Thank you, Bridget. And then I think it says 59 on here last month. So again, thank you all for being so engaged in our. Okay, so the next on our list is the community builder. So let me pull up the chat. And just for our community builder, just to connect, because we're all on virtual Zoom, so it's nice to learn about each other, introduce who's here. So we always encourage being on camera, saying hi. If you unmute it, you'll pop to the front so people can see you. So you're welcome to do that while I read your entry. So thank you all for putting that in the chat. So of course, this month's community builder was about a favorite place that you like to visit locally. So I started out the chat and I said the new restaurant, Mescalitos in downtown Bremerton, was really an excellent place. I'm excited that the former Bremerton Bar and Grill is now this restaurant. I heard there's some others in the county, so the fried ice cream was amazing and the drinks, so it's a really good place to visit. And then Leif from BHA says Noah's Ark. He loves the original Ark burger. And then Amy Waterman from the League of Women Voters is joining today to listen and learn. She recently went to Lola's in the Manette area. Wonderful food. I'll have to look that one up. And then Lisa from the library, Susie's Kitchen. Where is that, Lisa?
It's on 6th and Callow. Anna, I don't know if you're really excited about Susie's or another reason, but it's good. I think Anna's excited about Susie's.
That's awesome. And then let me see, we have Christina Wagner. She loves Cup and Muffin in Kingston.
Yeah, we are a new nonprofit in Kingston, and we're just trying to get to know the community. And this is my sister, Lauren, and I'm Christina. Nice to meet you.
What's your nonprofit?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Equine Energy, where we have a park-like setting, and we use horses to help humans heal. And I'm a chiropractor and acupuncturist, and we have programs that for horse therapy. Basically, that's what we're doing.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And next is Leah Nolden from the Kitsap County Housing and Homelessness Division. Her favorite local restaurant is That One Place in Fort Roger. And then Bridget from Kitsap Mental Health Services. And I don't know how to pronounce this, but I'm going to try Taqueria El Huracho. Our favorite bartender hooks us up with great microingredients. That's always a good reason to. Sam Agnew, Sandwich PHASO. He will be presenting today, so excited to have you. Then Janet Mora from Rebuilding Hope Sexual Assault Center, and it's her first meeting, so thank you, Janet.
Hi, it's Jeanette, actually.
And then where are you? And then you're from
Rebuilding Hope Sexual Assault Center.
Excited to have you. Doug Washburn, Kitsap County Human Services, and they like Crabtree Kitchen and Boston. That's a great place too. Silver, and then Audrey Wolf, Silver City, and oldie but ungoodie. Yes, it is. Then Rachel DeJesus from the Bremerton Property Oasis Outreach Youth Programs team. Austin knows, and never had something just like there. And then one day, wait, what were you saying? Let's see, Rachel, are you there?
Halibut cheek. Anytime they have halibut cheek, it's the best day to go.
That's a great recommendation. I would have never considered it. So thank you, Rachel. Nice to have you here. And then Christina mentioned the nonprofit Equine Energy. And then Virginia McCaslin from the Kitsap County Housing and Homelessness Division likes treasure hunting at local thrift stores. Also a favorite activity of mine. And then Audrey Wolf says Crabtree Family's awesome. Curtis Murray of SUDP. And I have to ask, what does that stand for? Curtis, I think we just went off mute, but we can't hear you.
Are you talking to us?
Oh no, Curtis is trying to say what his acronym was, but the audio.
Substance use disorder professional.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And he lives China West in Philip. And Patrick Steele, Director of Youth Programs at Property Oasis, Danny's Barbecue in Silverdale, Michael Stevenson of Bremerton Housing Authority, Tony's Pizzeria. He grew up in Seattle, but would often celebrate birthday parties and family events with cousins from Bremerton. And Sean Nye, clinical social worker at Helpline House. My guilty pleasure for treats is McGavins. Breaks. Cafe, Anna Mockers is Cafe Foro in Palo. Miranda Rules. And of course, Anna is with the Bremerton City Council. Frankie Coleman, Coordinated Care, Community Relations Coordinator, Lola's. And Madison Tuttle, Kitsap Homes of Compassion. Of course, we introduced you already, Madison, but she used to work at the Full's Bohemian Coffee House. So it has a special place in the heart. And then Kimberly on supportive service for veteran families. And Noah's, she said, I'm assuming that's Noah's in Bremerton. And then Nicole Vaughn, PEN program, my favorite method. How do you pronounce that?
I don't know how to pronounce it either. That was a good try.
I appreciate that. Isn't it interesting how we go somewhere and we don't think about how to pronounce it? But that's a great place. I appreciate that. And everything she's tried has been great. So thank you for sharing that. And then Michelle Dayro, Kitsap Transit, Kirsten Jewell, Washington State Department of Commerce. She's also a guest presenter here, and she loves Grill Hut in Kingston. And then Michelle Vargo, West Sound Treatment Center, Operations Manager, also Noah's Ark. And then Maria Fergus, Punjab Cuisine in Poulsbo. How did I do, Maria?
You did great.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm loving all these new restaurants. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. Katie Knudsen, Crazy Erics. She's from the PEN program, Catholic Community Services. And then Jeff Coughlin, Bremerton Council, Evergreen Pizza. If you're there by the park. Nicole's on. Oh, it looks like it keeps popping out. There we go. And then the last one I have is Helen Haven, citizen of Bremerton, Cafe Corvo, and Los Encantados, Encantos. There we go. Our walking distance of being there. And I think that's where the High and Lows, next to High and Lows. It's a bakery.
Next to where High Lows used to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for sharing. It's always great to have something to connect on. And we never see each other, but hopefully we will see each other more often these days. Project Connect was an amazing experience. I hope you all agreed that it was nice to just have this connection with each other. So let me bring back my agenda real quick. Okay, so my section of the agenda is done for now. Thank you all for joining us. Do you have any questions before we go on to the presenters? Oh, and I do have to say, I think I forgot. I wanted to mention that this meeting is recorded courtesy of Marwan Cameron and the Conduit Podcast. So it's streaming live. And they are all on the podcast YouTube channel. So you can see any previous meetings, which is helpful when we can't make this. So thank you all. And if you have to leave early or something, it will be recorded. So appreciate you all. And we'll get right to the first presentation. And Sam, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Hello.
Hi. Should I just jump right in?
Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you, Katie, for giving me time on your agenda, and hello, everyone. My name is Sam Agnew. I'm a care manager, and I work for the Salish Behavioral Health Administrative Services Organization. Our offices are in Port Orchard. We are housed with and technically part of the Kitsap County Human Services, although our leadership and our executive committee we're a regional entity for operations. But what I'm here to talk with you today about is naloxone cabinets. We are all, I would think everyone on this call is well aware of the opioid epidemic that we've been dealing with for years now. And now, fentanyl is around every corner. And I would think that probably everybody here is pretty up to speed with the problems we're facing with that. We at the ASO, I'll just abbreviate my organization, I'll call it the ASO, the Administrative Services Organization. For several years now, we've been supplying providers and some street level outreach teams, now formerly known as REAL teams. We provide those organizations with naloxone to do what we can to help fight the war on opiates. Naloxone is a drug that will hopefully, if it's administered in time, will reverse the effects of an overdose and hopefully, in extreme situations, prevent death. And I think there's definitely been some successes out there. Like I said, we've been providing naloxone to organizations throughout Kitsap County and throughout the Olympic Peninsula into Jefferson and Clallam County for quite some time now. But what we've decided is our next move, and that's to offer to partner with organizations who would entertain installing a naloxone cabinet at their place of business, on their premises. A naloxone cabinet is different than something you might have heard called a naloxone vending machine. And so I do want to make the distinction here. Naloxone cabinets that we have, there's really no technology involved in somebody obtaining a naloxone kit out of it. It's a simple grab and go type of a situation. Anyone could have access to it. There is a door that locks on it, and the door would be open to assist in loading the cabinet. But someone could walk up to the cabinet at any time and just simply pull out a box of naloxone. I have one of these kits here. Probably everybody has seen this is a kit. Inside this kit is 2 naloxone doses. the intranasal kind of little syringe, or not, it's not a syringe, it's a little, I'm not sure what the term is there, but it's an intranasal application. So anyway, we have these kits. We bought 10 of them. The kits we currently have hold 50, the cabinets we have hold 50 of these kits. So it's a pretty good supply. What we're hoping to do is work with community partners to have these cabinets installed at key locations throughout Kitsap County. These locations hopefully would be places where large portions of the population could access naloxone, not just the using population, but it could be their family, their friends, concerned neighbors, concerned citizens. It would be fine if people just took one of these kits to have in their car, to have one of these kits on the kitchen table in their house, because maybe they know someone who's using opiates, or they're concerned about someone who might live next door or something like that. So their reasons can be their own, but we want to get the naloxone out there and available to people so that it can make a difference. Naloxone that's kept in my office in a drawer really isn't very helpful when somebody might need it out in the community. And that's the message that we're trying to share with the community, is we want the kits to be out there and available to the people who might have the opportunity to use them to save a life. So we have these kits. We have, I'll say some structure around it, but it's very loose structure. It's very user-friendly structure. We understand, we being the organization I work for, the ASO, we firmly embrace that each one of the cabinets that we assist in getting installed in the community will come with its own unique circumstances. The ideal situation would be we mount this cabinet on the wall. It would be outside. It would be undercover and protected from weather. It might have some lighting around it so someone could access it 24/7, day or night. And that the location is known to people. Some ways that we're going to assist in that happening is when we work with, I'll just say you in general, and we install a cabinet at your location, we will post that location on our website, and we have a naloxone cabinet locator map that we will continue to update. So if somebody goes onto our website, ahead of time seeking, where can I find naloxone in my area? They could find this locator map, and it will show them exactly. It will provide addresses, and ideally it would even provide a picture of the mounted cabinet at your location, so somebody might know exactly where that is and how they could get there. But the circumstances around, having a cabinet on your location, who would fill it, who would check it, who would maintain it, those are things that we're willing to work out on a very individualized basis with you. We're not going to just mandate that it has to work a certain way. We want to support you in any way we can for you to understand who from your organization will be able to check it and maintain it, or maybe that doesn't even maybe that's not an option and somebody else might have to step in and do that. But we would help you work out those details. Other details would be, where's the naloxone going to come from? Will you purchase it yourself to supply the cabinet, or is there some way that my organization, the ASO, could help you with that? So we're open to supporting the new owners, if you will, of these cabinets in any way that we can to make it successful. We're going to pay very close attention to not overlapping boxes. If we had one on 3 consecutive buildings within a certain block, that may not be as helpful as having one every few blocks or several in a downtown area. So we do want to make sure that we're not overlapping because we want people to have some options where they go. We have worked with several community partners already in Kitsap, and we're hoping to move forward with all of them. I know that we've talked with the Salvation Army, and I think I saw Eric on here today. We're working with Kitsap Transit, and we hope that they will work with us to help us locate some of these boxes on some of their busier routes and in some very key areas throughout Kitsap County. We're also working with the BART clinic, which is I'll just, kind of give the shorthand version, the methadone clinic the opioid treatment clinic out there in Kitsap Way in East Bremerton. And so we have several things in the works. We are very flexible with working out the details with whoever these community partners are. When we deliver the cabinet to you for installation, we will have it fully stocked with naloxone kits. So as soon as it's mounted, it's operational. So we would, when we work with you, some of the things that we'll encourage you to think about is where will you put this? And, you know, that might seem like a pretty simple thing, but you know, some people have more questions and more hoops to jump through with that than others. What kind of a mounting situation will it be? We've worked with some people who, you know, mounting it on the outside of a wall and the outside of a building isn't as simple as it might sound, because maybe the building is completely made of block or stone or something like that. So we want to know what the barriers or the challenges are to mounting a box and how we can support other types of boxes. We have ordered some other boxes and some other varieties of both capacity and style of box. And so this is not a really like a flash in the pan type of a conversation I'm having with you. I want you to understand that this will continue. This is a route we're going and a direction we're going to continue to support with the boxes. There are a variety of styles, locations, capacities. And on our end, we're very interested in finding what will work for the most people in most situations to reach the most people. But other things you might need to worry about is like, you know, in your organization, if you have a larger organization, you know, do you need to have a work order to get the box mounted, or can you just go out there with your own tools and put the thing up and start working, or get it available to people? Who will keep an eye on the box? Who will restock it and load it? And these are things that's going to be very unique to whoever houses the box and whoever takes the box and mounts it at their location. Who within your organization will do that? We ideally will want you to tell us who that is, not so we can mandate that or act like Big Brother here, but we want to know that these details are worked out so that we have points of contact from our organization to contact your organization if something should go wrong, such as vandalism of the box, or if you relocate the box, we want to know that you've changed locations with it, and we want to be able to stay current with that on our locator menu. So there's obvious, you know, it's not a difficult project, but there are details, and we want to let people know going ahead with this that, you know, hey, there's going to be some details you need to work out. We've tried to write some things down. We've identified a list. We call it a list of considerations that any organization might want to just kind of, you know, a good starting place to see if it's a good fit for you. And then if you decide to go forward with that, we will meet with you. We will talk with you. We will give you any information you need to support you the best we can in this endeavor. And really, we just hope that, you know, for some of the people on this meeting, or who knows how many, that you'll decide this is something you want to do, and that we can move forward and we can, you know, find homes for these boxes and hopefully others. And with that, I'll just kind of throttle down here a little bit, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that may arise from what I've just said.
Michael?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak up on behalf of Bremerton Housing Authority. Both Leif Wagner and myself serve on the safety committee here, and we had it on our agenda for tomorrow to be discussing the possibility of stocking naloxone on some of our properties. So there's already some, you know, discussion and interest in, you know, providing that on our properties. So I think, you know, the committee isn't the you know, the final call on, you know, whether that would be approved or not, but we can certainly make a recommendation, and, you know, would love to have more information about the program that, you know, we could take with us to the committee, or just to follow up with you afterwards, because it does sound like a natural fit for us here.
Okay, I just put my my email in the chat, and that's probably the best way to open up a dialogue. We'll you know, email me. I'll be happy to forward you any information we have and answer any questions you may have. And yeah, thank you for being interested in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Jeff?
Thank you so much, Sam. This sounds like an amazing project. I had a downtown business owner, I think others would be interested as well, but one who was interested in having naloxone basically at her bar. And there's been cases where not everyone has had to show up, and thank goodness they had it. But the one issue she ran into was when she talked to her insurance company, it sounds like her insurance rates were going to go up if she stocked it. And I just wanted to see if that was anything you've ever run into, or maybe there's a possibility where, I don't know if the county could take some liability, and I can just connect you to it and go from there, but I wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, just response to that. I have not heard, I've not had any conversation about insurance rates or anything like that. And I guess they could have some cause for concern, but I know that I've had no conversations like that. As far as the county taking liability for it, it's probably doubtful. It could happen, but right now I can tell you that I cannot provide you an answer on that.
Okay, I'll go to your email and see if you can connect.
Okay, all right.
Donna?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Agnew. How many places have you mounted these outside, and what kind of success have you had with them?
Okay, so far we've mounted one. We initially purchased 10 of these boxes. And we did that. We received the boxes very late last year, so kind of moving into the holidays. So we just kind of, there were other priorities at the time. So we thought, well, let's worry on identifying kind of some structure for the program and some things for people to think about, the things I mentioned a few minutes ago. But I will say that we did mount our first box. I think it was on the 9th, and that is at the Port Gamble Sklallam Tribal Facilities up in Kingston.
The 9th of February?
Yes, 9th of February. And so, they worked through the process with us. A lot of the people we talked about are very excited about the boxes. It doesn't mean it just goes over overnight. We don't really have a lot of barriers for this. In fact, we want to make this a very low barrier situation, but we just want to give time for organizations to think things through, think about where they want to mount it. Like I said, kind of identify some of those details. So we've got one mounted, and I'd say right now there's about anywhere from 3 to probably another 8 that are really kind of moving from the back burner to the front burner. Like I said, we are a regional organization. My organization is. So we're talking to other tribes out on the far west end with the Quileute and the Ho and the Makah nations. Other locations in Klallam County. And then, like I mentioned, some of the ones we're working with here in Kitsap County as well. So I want to think that, gosh, the timeline, we wrestle with the timeline a little bit because, everybody moves at a little bit different pace. But I'm hoping that maybe not by the end of this month, but certainly by the end of March, that we would have these initial 10 cabinets mounted. And we do have other cabinets ordered and pending delivery as we speak.
That's great. And so these are successful somewhere else?
There's a number of naloxone cabinets throughout the region already that are not sourced by us, by my organization. Jefferson County has a number of naloxone cabinets in place already. The exact number, I don't know, but I'd say probably 10, maybe a dozen throughout the county. And that extends anywhere from Port Townsend down as far as Brennan. And then I know that there's probably another, at least a half a dozen cabinets in Klallam County. There's a couple in Forks. I know there's one in Klallam Bay. There's several in Port Angeles. And yes, they're being used. And because they're being used, I want to think they're making a difference.
That's great. Just a couple more things. One is, of course, that Salish has a contract with City of Bremerton to provide behavioral health services. So we would certainly like an official update on this. But I'll email you about that.
Okay.
The final question that I had is recent anecdotal information that I am getting from the community is that for some of these fentanyl ODs, 7 to 8 doses are needed.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
I was going to say, so could you respond to that? And you're already doing it.
I will. And so I've heard some similar things. Whether it's 7 or 8, or 5 or 6 or even more, I think, the situation dictates. But I've heard many times that it requires more than just the 2 that are in any given kit. And of course, that depends on, how much someone's used and what the circumstances are. I had a sit-down meeting with the BART clinic in Port Angeles about 10 days or so ago. I talked directly with the director himself, and that's what they were reporting as well. The information they've heard is sometimes it takes about 3 to 4 kits, depending on the circumstances, to bring someone out of an overdose. And I think that's a really strong point to make. And I think that as something I would always encourage an organization to think about if they're going to put one of these up, especially in the early going, you might expect a lot of kits to be taken out of these. There's going to be some people that take them out of curiosity. Some people take them out just because they want to have one on hand. And some people who really have experience with overdoses might think, well, I'm going to grab 3 or 4 of these, or a half a dozen or 10, because I'm very familiar with how many kits it takes to revive someone. So I think there's a lot of variety that's going to happen there when people start to use the kits. But that's a very good question. Thanks for asking that, Anna.
Thank you. I have multiple additional questions, but it is already almost 2:40, so I will hold them, and I look forward to emailing you. Thank you very much,
please.
Mr. Agner.
Yeah, thank you very much too.
Could I just add one thing to that, Sam, please? We use those kits a lot at Salvation Army, and in the event that you are experiencing someone that's overdosing and they're not responding, they could very easily be involved with drugs that aren't opioids. And there's so much unpure drugs out there that are mixed with a fentanyl mixture that I'm not even sure people know what they're taking some of the time. So you can't expect to get the same result from the naloxone, which is targeted for an opioid, right? It will not reverse a meth overdose, right? It will not reverse an overdose of something that's not an opioid. So oxygen, first responding, breaths, compressions, all those things are necessary in addition to the application of the medicine in order to bring somebody back. So obviously 911 is the first call, and then use what you got, as your judgment dictates and your training allows you to make those decisions. And call for help quickly. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you so much, Sam. I don't see any additional questions in the chat, but I'm not sure if you're going to stay on here the whole time, but Sam has provided contact information, and it sounds like there's a lot of interest in this program. So thank you so much for coming to us and presenting. And if you have information you want to share on our newsletter, I can do that as well. So if you want to share a flyer or something, just again, keep the conversation going. It sounds like it will be a real community effort.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Katie, for giving me time.
Yeah, thank you. So our next presentation is with Kirsten Buell. Hi, Kirsten.
Hello.
Hi. Are you, first of all, welcome back. We're all happy to see you. I know many of us may have seen you at the Portland Time Count, but thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to try to share my screen. I've had some mixed results with that, trying to do a PowerPoint presentation and share my screen correctly. So let me try to do that and see if we can make the technology cooperate with us. So let me try to do that. So can you see my, let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint. So not that
You can see my PowerPoint?
You can see your PowerPoint, yep.
Okay.
It looks good.
It's awesome. It's working. Oh, this is great. Wonderful. That's a good sign. All right. Well, just to get started, my name is Kirsten Jewell. I prefer she, her pronouns. I worked for a long time in Kitsap County, so I know many of you on the call, but probably not everybody. I, about 10 months ago, went to work for the Department of Commerce as the state housing policy manager. And I've been having a wonderful time working at the state, but boy, I really miss all of you. And I love keeping up with all the good work you're doing by staying connected through the Housing and Homelessness Coalition. At the Department of Commerce, we do a lot of different things, not just housing and homelessness. We sometimes call ourselves the Swiss Army knife of state government. We do a lot of different programs that all strengthen communities. I was invited today to originally do a 2024 legislative update, and I suggested that because there isn't a ton to talk about with legislative update, I offered to do a little bit more of a deep dive on a few other things that are being worked on at the state level, and of course answer questions at the end. This is a little bit of like a buffet of things. Like I could talk about any one of these things for a long time, and I'm just gonna like give you a touch of a little bit of a serving of each one of them, and then we can talk more at the end about anything that you want more information about. So within the Department of Commerce, there are 8 different divisions, and about a year and a half ago, there was a fairly large reorganization, and it created a new housing division. So in the past, there was a housing and community services division, and they split off the housing division and brought a bunch of programs under that had been sort of sprinkled around in other parts of the Department of Commerce. And so we have a new housing division, and as you'll see, it's organized into various different units. 5 of those units have work that's primarily related to operating programs that you might be familiar with, and they're divided up into units that address different aspects of housing along the continuum. So everything from the homelessness assistance unit, which many of you may be familiar with through some of the grant programs that come through the county. But we also have units that work with multifamily housing, which is essentially the Housing Trust Fund, and permanent supported housing through the Office of Apple Health and Homes and Permanent Supported Housing. We also have the Office of Homeless Youth that primarily works with youth who are experiencing housing instability. And we have the homeownership unit as well. In addition, there's a data and performance unit that sort of serves all of these other units, managing HMIS, analyzing data, managing performance metrics, and then producing Lovely reports, which I'll talk a little bit about in the future. And then if you look in the upper right corner, there's that little box that says policy team. We've evolved a little bit since this graphic. We're now the policy and strategic initiatives team, and we also serve all of the other units doing legislative work, kind of external relations, liaising and coordinating across units and agencies, staffing advisory groups, working on a lot of different legislative reports. And we're all, I guess, within the Swiss Army knife of commerce, we're like the Swiss Army knife of the housing division, because we just do a whole bunch of other stuff. One of the other projects that we manage is the governor's priority rights of way or encampment resolution program, which works specifically to resolve encampments on state rights of way. So no activity on that in Kitsap County, but we have been doing a lot of work up and down the I-5 corridor, as well as in Spokane. So just a little bit of context. I'm sure it won't come to any surprise to you that we are seeing homelessness continuing to trend up across the state. Thank you to everyone who participated in the point in time count a couple of weeks ago. And we are excited to get that data coming in over the next few weeks. And hopefully we'll see that trend of households experiencing homelessness going the other direction. But we won't really have all of that aggregated data for quite some time. What we do know is that we're seeing people in shelters and other temporary housing options increasing. You'll see here the orange bars are people who are currently in emergency shelters, and the greenish lime bars are people in transitional housing. There's a small category of housing that's called safe havens, and those are essentially shelters that are open 24/7 and have a slightly different designation. But over time, you can see we saw a small dip in 2021. That was mostly due to the pandemic and sort of having to shut down some shelters or decrease capacity because of distancing requirements. And then we've actually seen the number of shelter beds and emergency housing increase, so that we're a little bit over 14,000 across the state now. The good news is that we're also seeing an increase in the number of people who are exiting homelessness and into permanent housing. So here you can see year over year, between 2020 and 2023, we've seen an increase in the number of people who are being supported in rapid rehousing, permanent supported housing, as well as other permanent housing projects. Turning our attention to a slightly different topic, we know that the ultimate solution for homelessness is housing, and people need housing to be able to exit homelessness, and nearly every community across our state doesn't have enough housing. I used to call it, we don't have enough beds for every head at this point. And currently more than 90% of housing units across the state are private market units without any subsidy. We need to foster a healthy housing market and rental market to successfully be able to make sure that there's housing for everyone who needs it. In the last couple sessions, the legislature has made some really critical land use changes, which are aimed at trying to increase the supply and environment to create more units of affordable housing. And these changes will help address the shortages of housing in Washington, which is what's causing our price inflation. So the Department of Commerce, at the legislature's direction, released housing targets for each jurisdiction or each county. This was a requirement under House Bill 1220. I hope most of you have heard of that by now. So under House Bill 1220, each county received a certain number of housing units that was anticipated to be needed in the next 20 years. And these are broken down by different income bands. So here you can see across the state, we need 1.1 million new homes, and about half of those need to be homes that are affordable for people who have 50% or less of the area median income. So this is a pretty big lift. I know I'll get to the numbers for Washington, for Kitsap County in just a minute. Here you can see that we are not keeping up with the pace that we need to in order to develop those 1.1 million units. The green line in this chart shows like the target that we need to be at, which is approximately 55 units per year across the state. We met that target very briefly in 2021, and then guess what happened? The Fed dramatically increased interest rates. And when the Fed increased interest rates, that had a dampening effect on the housing market. So we saw housing production decrease. And so we are currently behind pace to be able to develop the number of units that we need to catch up. So every year that we don't produce 55,000 units, right now we're about 15,000 units behind the pace. That means that we increase the number we have to make, develop each year to catch up. So continued underbuilding is going to exacerbate the existing shortage of units, which is currently estimated to be about 100,000 units across the state. We like to be very data informed as we do planning for the future. So those 1220 targets and a lot of corollary work that's being done by our colleagues in the Department of Commerce Local Government Growth Management unit are providing a lot of resources to local communities to try to do planning for those units that we talked about here. And at the state level, we also are trying to use a lot of other research to plan to chart a course for our future other needs, things that we need to do to address this housing crisis. So I wanted to highlight a couple of studies that have been done recently that are starting to inform our work. You might remember several years ago during the pandemic, there was an initiative at the state level to provide a small one-time or two-time stipend to homeless provider workers of about $2,000. That was a one-time, thank you so much, we really appreciate your work effort, but it was not a long-term sustainable way to address some of the really big underlying problems and issues that face our amazingly valuable workforce that's doing this really important work. So the legislature commissioned two different studies. One was around homeless provider workforce trauma and sort of what is being experienced by people who are working in the homelessness sector, and what are their needs related to that secondary and tertiary trauma. The second study really focused more on sort of what does that workforce need to be sustainable. So things like increases in pay, increased support in their workplaces, increased training, and increased resources. So the homeless provider workforce trauma study is published and available, and I can provide the link for that. It's on the Washington State Department of Commerce reports webpage. The homeless provider workforce needs study is just about to be published. Both of those provide not just some really qualitative data from a lot of interviews with people who are doing this work, but also some recommendations for both the state as a whole, sort of legislative recommendations for things that could change, as well as things that the Department of Commerce specifically could and should do, and things that could happen at the local provider level, sort of the employer level, to improve conditions and increase the sustainability of our homeless provider workforce. We are in the process of analyzing those recommendations that are directed specifically at the Department of Commerce to determine which ones we can do instantly, right away in the next year, which ones will take legislative action and additional resources to do, and which ones are sort of longer term structural changes that we need to start working towards. In addition to those two studies, there's two others that I wanted to highlight. One is the Pathways to Housing Stability Report, which addresses homelessness specifically, and then the Affordable Housing 5-Year Advisory Plan, which is a state sort of plan, data, and recommendations for affordable housing. So the Pathways to Housing Security Report was also commissioned by the legislature. This has been a 3-year report. The Ruckelshaus Center is a sort of apolitical think tank that does research. It's a joint project between Washington State University and University of Washington, and they are essentially researchers that act when asked by the legislature and others to do sort of third-party objective research and studies. They did an amazing amount of research and facilitated qualitative data through interviews with literally hundreds of stakeholders, as well as analyzing existing data about homelessness and the statewide homeless crisis response system, as well as response systems in individual communities. They produced 3 different reports that outline guiding principles and themes that they are recommending should inform long-term state strategy that would increase the opportunity for people to publish in December of 2023, and you can find it on the Ruckelshaus Center website. So since it was commissioned and published by a third party, it's not a Department of Commerce report, but it is quite an extensive report, and it also includes a number of recommendations for how the state should change how it is doing things to address homelessness on a sort of broad scale. So that information, as well as information from the about to be published Affordable Housing Advisory Plan. This is a 5-year plan that was developed by the Affordable Housing Advisory Board, which is a statewide advisory group. This is a huge body of work. It looked at both progress towards meeting housing needs statewide and on a county by county basis. It engaged local governments through surveys and did a number of stakeholder engagements as well. It analyzed housing barriers, market trends, and projected housing needs. And it really builds on that 12-20 work that I talked about earlier in the presentation about projections for housing needs. The last time we had a 5-year housing advisory plan was actually in 2015. And we used some information from that 2015 plan quite extensively. Part of that was production of a profile for each county that really analyzed the need for affordable housing and the rent burden for households in each county. If you've seen any Kitsap County Housing and Homelessness Division handouts, they're sort of this nice blue shade, and there's a bunch of graphics that show the housing need. Those were actually from that 2015 Affordable Housing Advisory Plan profile for each county. And I'm excited to tell you that they have done a next generation version of these housing needs assessment profiles for each county, including Kitsap. And here is a little sneak peek on what you might see in that when that AHAB or Affordable Housing Advisory 5-year plan is published in the next couple of weeks. These will be available to every county, and you can look at how Kitsap is doing as well as how other counties across the state are doing. And it's also available for some of the sort of metro areas. So I think there's one for sort of the greater Bremerton area as well as for Kitsap County as a whole. And it's a 3-page profile, and it breaks down some progress since the last report. So this chart shows how have we done making progress towards housing goals since about 2015, the last time this research was done. And you can see that there's some different goals and then some indicators or measures. These are more extensively detailed within the report. And this is just sort of like the high level thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs to the side. Did we make progress? Did we do about the same? Are we losing ground in these different indicator arrows? And as you can see here for Kitsap, it's a bit of a mixed bag. In some areas, we've made a little bit of progress. In some areas, we've lost some ground. And in some areas, we've just sort of stayed the same. There hasn't been a quantitative change in how we're doing against these various progress indicators. The profile also looks at housing insecurity, measures cost burden by income level based on sort of household income for owner-occupied as well as renter-occupied households. It also looks at how we've tracked homelessness over the last five or 6 years. And then it looks at race and ethnicity and how there is a disparate impact and disparate access to home ownership for households of color. You can see kind of the roundup here is that about 32,000 households in Kitsap are moderately or severely cost burdened. And of those, 7,081 are Black, Indigenous, or people of color households. That's self-identified. And then the third page of the profile looks a little more similar to what you might have seen in that one from 2015. It looks at housing affordability, particularly in the rental market. We've added more details around home ownership affordability as well. And as you can see, we still have a significant number of households who are quite rent burdened. In the bottom right corner, this is a synopsis of the 12-20 projections of housing units for Kitsap County specifically as a whole, not broken out to the different cities within Kitsap, but as the whole county. You can see the projection is that we need about 24,000 more units in the next 20 years. And about half of those need to be for households 50% or less of area median income. And you can see where we need to be really focusing our efforts on increasing the units available for these different households. So in this chart in the bottom right, the gray is sort of what the current supply is, and the pink is what we need to be producing in the next 20 years. Based on really using the Ruckelshaus report or the Pathways to Housing Security report, the state is undertaking an update to the state homeless housing strategic plan. What you see on the screen is the vision and mission and guiding principles for the current plan that we're operating under while we write the next plan. So this is the kind of the last year of that last 5-year plan. And we have started by doing an analysis of how well we've met our objectives and actions for that last plan. And as you can see, there's going to be quite a bit of analysis of these in detail, but I don't have time to go into it. But of the various actions that we identified, that the state identified, we've had success and feel like we've done a great job in certain areas, and a number of other areas we are still working on. Some of those were delays caused by the pandemic and a need to really pivot to other focus areas as we were helping distribute a large amount of federal funding or focusing on standing up rent assistance programs. But these are items that will continue to be worked on over the next plan as well. It's quite an extensive process to do this update. We have a person working on it almost full time. And it includes a lot of input from various different groups, as well as people who have lived experience. We anticipate circulating the draft among internal stakeholders so that you'll have a chance to publicly comment on that draft. And we're also trying to integrate research and best practices, including the Ruckelshaus report. The current time frame for that public comment period is approximately April to May. So we're working on gathering input right now over the next couple of months, and then in April releasing a plan for public comment and then incorporating changes, and then that final plan being released in September of 2024. Of particular interest is at that time we'll also be releasing local plan guidance. So that is sort of like, what are the minimum requirements that the state is expecting for each local homeless housing plan to include? And then I believe that those local plans are due the following December, so that you have a little over a year to take that local plan guidance and do that work at the local level to produce a local homeless housing strategic plan that's consistent with the statewide plan. I'm going to pivot now to talk about the legislative session. Oops, my slides are a little bit out of order here. Oops, sorry. I want to talk about this slide first, sort of where we are in the legislative session. So for those of you who are not following state legislative stuff very closely, that is totally fine. There's a lot of people who do. But just on a broad level, our state operates on a 2-year biennial basis. So every 2 years, we have what's called a long session. And in that long session, the state sets a budget for 2 years. And that is when they pass the majority of legislation that's going to be passed for the biennium. And then the second year is a short session. And in that session, they pass a little bit of legislation, and then they also make some tweaks to the budget based on revenue forecasts and changes that have happened over the last year. So we are right now in a short session. It's a 60-day session, and it feels like it's going by really fast. We are currently on day 45 of the legislative session with 15 days to go. So we're getting down to the point where a lot of bills have not passed. A lot of bills have not been able to jump through the many, many, many hoops that it takes to get to final approval. Today, in fact, is another really important day where all the bills that are going to move forward have to be passed out of the committee that they've been referred to. So by the end of the day today, we'll know a whole nother group of bills that have fallen by the wayside and are not going to get worked on. There's a small category of bills which are necessary to implement the budget, or NTIB, necessary to implement budget. Those bills are not really dead until the last day of session. They can be brought to life and quickly pushed through those hoops or incorporated into the state budget in a different way. So right now we're racing towards the finish line, and the last day of session is expected to be March 7th. So I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about the context we're operating in, which is the first year of the biennium, which was 2023, the last session. We had unprecedented investments in affordable housing and homelessness programs. $483 million of new money was invested for capital projects. Most of those in the Housing Trust Fund, but also some for shelters, for youth, for landlord mitigation programs, for the CHIP program, which is providing infrastructure grants to provide sort of the utilities and infrastructure for affordable housing projects, as well as this $40 million for land acquisition. This was an unprecedented investment, and we're starting to see these investments trickle out. So the Housing Trust Fund had a funding cycle, and they last month announced the awards for that funding cycle. And as you can see, we saw a huge amount of investment, a dramatic increase from 2019, 2021. 21-23 was sort of a weird increase year because we had a whole bunch of federal pandemic money that also got distributed. So it's kind of an anomaly. But broadly, 2023 to 2025, that biennium, we saw huge increases in our budget for capital projects. And the distribution of those funds is, as I said, just been announced, about $313 million, which we anticipate creating almost 4,000 new affordable homes. This money's been awarded, and now we're in the contracting phase. So we'll just start to see those projects sort of getting placed into service probably in the next year to 2 years. Of note, about 10% of these funds were invested with by and for organizations as mandated by the legislature. There's also a special set aside of housing for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, as well as a set aside for permanent supported housing and transit-oriented development, which means development located near major transit areas in urban areas. Also, in the first year of the biennium, we saw $1.2 billion, billion with a B, $1.2 billion invested for operating expenses. So this included funding for homeless response programs, homeownership programs, housing and essential needs, some backfill money for local governments to continue to contract with nonprofits to keep open shelter beds, some operations and maintenance for permanent supported housing, some Office of Homeless Youth programs, and on and on. So just an unprecedented amount of operating funding also. And you can see here sort of the relative increase on this chart. It looks like almost a doubling of funding from 700,000 in the prior biennium to 1.2 billion in this current biennium that we're in now. And even though we saw an increase in state funding, broadly we have seen a net loss of state and local funding through expiring pandemic one-time federal funding, as well as declines in local government document recording fees. And that is of particular concern, again, in this supplemental session, the second year of the biennium, because even though the legislature allocated some funding to try to help local governments maintain current shelter and transitional housing levels, we are continuing to see the document recording fee collections are not as high as they used to be, and some jurisdictions are really struggling with keeping their budgets intact. Just as a side note, if you're interested, Washington State has some of the most transparent reporting on how we spend our housing and homelessness funding of any state in the country. In fact, other states look to Washington to try to emulate what we do. So you can go on the state website, the Department of Commerce website, and look at any public homeless funding or any public capital funding and see how that money is being spent. And Commerce also has our fantastic data and performance unit, which produces these lovely interactive dashboards where you can go and look at how each county is doing in terms of meeting our performance metrics for homelessness, some of which include how many people are exiting the permanent housing and returning to homelessness and how good of a job we're doing prioritizing funding people who are coming from unsheltered homelessness, et cetera. So this is like one of about 10 different dashboards that you can interact with. And I highly encourage people to go take a look at the state website to access these dashboards. Are kind of fun to see how we're doing in Kitsap compared to like our neighboring counties in Snohomish and Pierce and Mason, et cetera. So coming back to this legislative session, as I said, it's a short session. We're almost 3/4 of the way through it. And so we don't really know yet. I don't have a way to report to you like what's gonna pass in the next 15 days. But I can tell you the bills that as of last night were alive and ones that we think are of particular interest to housing and homelessness providers. When we started this session, there were probably 95 bills that we were tracking, and now we're down to like 15 or 20. And I'm sure after today, it'll be even a smaller number. So these are ones that don't have as big of an impact directly for the housing division or for homelessness providers, but they do attempt, there's a lot of interest at the legislative level to continue that work to expand incentives for development of affordable housing. So there's a couple of bills that relate to tax exemptions for operating affordable housing. There's a very large bill 2114, which is a rent stabilization bill that would cap the amount that landlords are able to increase rent each year in certain circumstances, and also provide tenants with some recourse if that those rules are not being followed. It would increase the noticing requirements for tenants around how quickly rents could be increased, et cetera. So it's a really big rent stabilization bill. It would be really the first of its kind in our state. It's not universally supported, so it's going to be an interesting debate. It was the last bill that passed off of the floor when we hit that cutoff for bills having to be passed out of their house of origin, and it was quite hotly debated. So I'm interested to see how it moves forward in the Senate now. Another bill that we're watching with quite a bit of interest is 2270. This is a bill that would, originally it was slated to create a new Department of Housing in the state government. Now it's been scaled back to just do a study about what it would take to create a new Department of Housing. So instead of the housing division that I talked about being within the Department of Commerce, we would have our own, there would be like a whole Department of Housing, and it would be a standalone department. And there's definitely some big pros and cons to that, but that is what the study is for. So we're watching closely to see if that passes. There's a lot of interest by legislators in doing this research and considering whether that makes sense to have a new Department of Housing. There's another bill, 2276, which would be a big kind of modification of real estate excise tax, or REIT. This bill is currently dead. It would change the way that REIT is collected. It would reduce the real estate excise tax on some lower value properties and increase it on higher value properties. And all of that funding, or a lot of that funding, would go to support affordable housing and workforce housing. It is technically dead, but it is, as I mentioned, a necessary to implement budget bill. So there's some talk of it maybe coming back or getting incorporated. So that one is like one of those, it's not dead till the end of session bills. There's also an interesting bill to study the insurance market related to affordable housing. This is based on a lot of concern from affordable housing operators that they're seeing their insurance skyrocket. Local homeowners are also seeing this. And that is dramatically driving up the operating costs for permanent supported housing and regular affordable housing. So this would be a bill to really have the Office of Insurance Commissioner study the insurance market related to affordable housing. And then last, a bill that would allow a local option tax on short-term rentals that are managed through electronic platforms. So like Airbnb and Vacation VBRO, local governments could vote to increase or to create a local option tax on those, which could be used for affordable housing. And then there's a number of bills that are related specifically to land use and zoning, which we're tracking as well. Again, they don't have a direct impact on housing or homelessness, but they would create more opportunities for housing to be produced. So there's a lot splitting bill, which is very interesting. It would allow or require jurisdictions to create code that allows some lots in urban areas to be divided or split, and put some rules around that. It would require local jurisdictions to allow co-living housing, which is essentially single room occupancy housing. It's housing where people are having individual bedrooms but sharing facilities. I think 2474, which would have required that when local jurisdictions want to refuse to approve the siting of a shelter or permanent supported housing, it would have to go to the state for mediation or review. Last I heard, that bill had died today. So I don't think that bill is currently moving forward, although we might still see some version of it. And then a bill around transit-oriented development, and then one that sort of further modifies and refines middle housing requirements and defines transit stops. And then last, we're keeping an eye on supplemental operating budgets and supplemental capital budgets. So these are the kind of tweaks to the main budget that was passed, the 2-year budget that was passed in the last session. There's definitely funding in, so what happens is the governor releases his dream budget before session starts. So he's got a capital budget and operating budget. And then just over this last weekend, the House released its operating budget and its capital budget, as well as a transportation budget. And the Senate released their operating budget, capital budget, and transportation budget. So now we basically have like 9 budgets, right? The ones that are really relevant are pretty much just the House and Senate budgets. And so what we do is we go through and we analyze what's in the House and the Senate budget and try to look at our magic 8 ball to see what's going to happen with some of these items. After the House and the Senate have released their budgets, there's a conference committee that gets together and sits down and negotiates what from each of those budgets is going to be in the final budget that both House and Senate will pass and governor will sign. So it's a good sign when you see something in both budgets, because it means that there is some agreement. Often the amounts are different, but at least if the item is in both budgets, it's a good sign that there's support for it. If you see it only in one budget, it's a little bit unsure whether it's going to make it into the final budget or not. It's good that it's in there, but we just don't really know whether it's going to be in the final budget or not. So we did see in the supplemental operating budgets funding to help backfill some additional money for local document reporting shortfalls to keep shelters and emergency housing programs open. Not enough money probably for what's really needed, but at least there is some funding that both the House and the Senate agree is needed. I did see in the Senate operating budget some funding for the new Kitsap County 70-bed low barrier shelter. So that's in the Senate budget, operating budget only, not in the House operating budget. So we'll see what happens with that. On the capital side, and remember, they're working with a lot smaller amount of money because they're only working with what they think is like the difference in what they originally thought they would have and what the sort of funding projection or the revenue projections are for this next year. So there's not a ton of money that they're working with. So we don't generally see a lot of big stuff happening in the supplemental budget on either the operating or capital sides. But they did include some additional money for the Housing Trust Fund for affordable housing projects broken up into several different categories, and including some specifically for individuals with developmental disabilities and some homeownership projects. There is some funding for the KCR Mills Crossing affordable housing project in one of the capital budgets. And I think there's funding for the San Vincent de Paul Phase 1 in one of those budgets as well. It's listed, but it doesn't say what the location of it is. So I had to go do a little digging, and I think this is the Bremerton one, but maybe one of you has more information about that. So that is where we are. We're we don't have definitive information. I'm happy to come back next month and give you another update on what actually happened. But this is sort of where we're looking right now, and the things that we're tracking and watching and keeping a close eye on. So with that, I know I've taken my time, and I'm also happy to answer questions. Or if you have questions, you can certainly email me, and I can get back to you with answers if they're more complicated than we can talk about today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. You think you're still sharing your screen if you want to share that?
I will stop sharing.
Oh, that's great. That was amazing, and so many things happening in the housing department. I have to say, one thing is that people are really interested in your slides. Will these slides be available?
Yes, I need to do a tiny bit of cleanup because I did a little editing at the last minute. So I'll do a little bit of cleanup, and then I'll send them over to Katie, and she can share them.
Yes, and I'm already about to put a Kirsten's Corner in the newsletter.
Yeah, I'm happy to do as much as I can. My heart is I still live in Kitsap County. My heart is always in Kitsap County, and I'm always like keeping a close eye out for what's happening specifically for Kitsap. So, yeah.
So if you want to raise your hands, we have a few minutes. We do have some questions in the chat. Let me see if I can find them. You all have questions for Kirsten, raise your hand. Let's see, somebody's looking for the website for the information. I personally, there's a lot on the Department of Commerce website, is that correct?
It's a very deep and wide website. I will look up the web address and put it in the chat here. Just give me a second. Even as an employee of Department of Commerce, I use our website all the time to look things up because there's so much information. Was there something in particular that you wanted?
It was when Nita just asked on which website can I locate the information on Kirsten's presentation. Of course, Kirsten will share the presentation, but also sounds like they're looking for a kind of a main link.
I mean, the main commerce website I'll put in the chat, but the information that I just sort of summarized is honestly kind of sprinkled around in different places, and not all of it is on the website at this point. If you go to the Commerce main website, you'll see there's sort of 4 main categories of information, and one is called Serving Communities. And under Serving Communities, there's a subpage, a subgroup of pages that's related to addressing homelessness. And that's where you can see all of those dashboards that I was sharing and some sort of summaries of information. There's a deep training site available there. On the other hand, if you go to the building infrastructure group of pages, that's where you'll find information about affordable housing and what the trust fund is doing and the kinds of projects that they've been funding and announcements about awards and things like that.
Thank you. Chelsea?
Hi, Kirsten. So I love that there's still some things alive for this legislative session. I was not watching closely last year. Is there anything that passed last year similar to what's up during short session that did pass that we should look at?
A lot passed in the last session. I actually have a brief, I put together a legislative highlights document, which I'll quickly flash on the screen, but then I can also share it with Lisa to share with all of you. So
that would be fantastic. Yeah, it's so overwhelming that I would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll produce this again for this session as well. So this is basically a summary of kind of the legislative highlights that happened. This is this is last year's session. So this is sort of like the big picture things of what happened in the budgets, and then key legislation that passed around some different categories, some land use and building regulation, affordable housing development, landlord tenant laws. There was a lot that passed around that last session as well, some home ownership, and then some sort of miscellaneous stuff. So this is also available, and as I said, I'll send it over and you guys can all have access to this, and we will be producing a similar thing a couple of weeks after this legislative session, once the dust is settled and we really understand what all actually got passed.
That's perfect. Thank you.
It looks like there's a little bit of chatter around 2114. Looks like there's lots going on. I think we might have all seen kind of the campaigns going out. So Katie Knudsen, if you want to talk about that a little bit, there is a Senate hearing that's at 10. And then Anna Mockler says that Tara Simmons is our local sponsor for Bill 2114. So I'm going to please follow it in the chat. So there's a lot of information about that. I know we haven't really done a formal presentation on that bill. Again, being short session and all. So again, reach out to Katie or Anna if you want to. Let's see, and then Marwan had a question. It just says, Kirsten Bailey question, landlord rent cap, illegal move outs because no rent cap? That's the question.
I'm so sorry. I'm getting a really echoey.
It might be me or might be you.
Your voice is really echoey. Would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah, it just says.
Might be me.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Kirsten, it just says Kirsten Bailey question, landlord rent cap question mark, illegal move outs because no rent.
So 2114 would restrict landlords from increasing rents by more. I think they can increase rents not at all in the first 12 months of tenancy, and then 7% per year would be the cap after that. And there's various other provisions, and some units are exempted from that. So that's just like the broad impact, but that would have some caps. It also requires additional noticing for tenants and provide some specific language for noticing for tenants when they're going to have a rent increase. It also limits the amount of fees that can be charged. And so anyway, lots of various different provisions in that bill. It's a pretty big and complicated bill. I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure I understood.
I think it was about that bill, but also there is a lot of information out there, and so you can also reach out to us and if we can find some information on it too. But thank you. I don't see any other questions. I know, Kirsten, just put your the link in the chat, and you'll be setting up the presentation, and we'll send it out via newsletter. So thank you again for giving us such a comprehensive view of the Department of Commerce. Lots of happening over there.
Yes, and I feel like this was like a tiny little slice of what's happening. There's quite a lot more. And as I said, I'm always happy to come back and give another update whenever you wish. So thanks everyone for your attention and for all the amazing work that you're doing. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Okay, so really quickly, we're going to switch gears. First of all, I want to talk about Project Connect for a second, just because we're running short on time, but I do want to acknowledge that Project Connect was last month. Our meeting was before that, then we had the week of Project Connect, and then we have this meeting. So the project team, it's called the Project Connect Planning Committee, has decided to kind of meet throughout the year to keep talking about Project Connect. So if you have any interest based on maybe you participated in Project Connect, and you would like to join kind of the planning side of Project Connect, we are open for your participation. So please email us at admin@kitsap.org, which is our normal address for everything. I think our Project Connect website is still on, our web page is still on the website. You can always contact us through there, learn more. But any feedback? I mean, we got lots of people filling out the survey, which was great. And we got lots of good feedback, lots of improvements. So we're always working hard to make that a great event for everyone, vendors and the public. Okay, so nobody has any questions about Project Connect. I will move on, but please know it's always on our minds. So if you have any suggestions or want to join, please
I had a question.
Mhm.
I was on the outreach team, so I didn't get to see how it functioned like at Project Connect for point in time. Was it basically like as someone walked in, they filled out a survey, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so at each location, we'd have a table set up to capture people as they come in the door. So at Salvation Army, we'd have surveyors in the entire cafeteria area, and then guests would then be directed upstairs to where the rest of the fair was at. And then at both Poulsbo and Port Orchard, we'd have a table where people enter at, and then the fair would be down the hall behind the entry table. So that's generally how we were set up at each of those locations.
Thanks, Corey. And is there going to be a separate opportunity for us to kind of debrief on like the outreach team, or is here where we would do that?
So we'll have a separate outreach team meeting that we're going to do that late March. I'm just making sure I get a room booked. I'll have an email out later this week.
Great.
So Jared, Carl, and I discussed that this morning, and unfortunately I was out for a little bit early February when I normally be trying to set up something like that. But then at least we'll be able to meet after we've got our preliminary point in time count reports done.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I think a lot of things went really well this year. So kudos, everybody.
Thank you for your question. And to celebrate our kind of youth and Project Connect being just last month, we're talking about awards now. And I know Kirsten was here too. And I think Kirsten at our awards ceremony last year is when we announced that you're moving on to the Department of Commerce. So it's a great meeting. It was in person at the Norm Dix building, where we just kind of celebrated each other. And it doesn't have any of the formal presentations or whatnot. And this year we're going to do our award ceremony in April. But to do the award ceremony, we have to have nominations. So every year, and I don't know how many years, somebody could tell me how many years it's been since we've been doing these awards, but it's really just to honor each other. So if somebody wants to jump in there, I'll share my screen and share the awards website. So this is kind of the web page we stood up for the awards, since we have so many award categories. We have 6. This is the easiest way to kind of put the forms in there. So again, multiple nominations are accepted. I'll put the link in the chat, but the more nominations, the better. And so that what will happen is, like we said, Monday, March 5th, but it's like Tuesday, March 5th. And then the next executive team meeting will come together and talk about how we want to kind of manage the nominations. Again, anybody's welcome to the executive team if you want to be part of that. But also, so we're just accepting nominations at this point. If you click on one of the buttons, it's just a form. Let's see if it works out. So it's just a form, and it tells you a little bit about the award and kind of what to put in the nomination area. So each one is a little bit different. So again, I'll put this link in the chat. It was in our newsletter as well. So any questions on award nominations? And to that point, Tuesday, not Wednesday, Tuesday, April 16th is when we are going to be in person for the awards ceremony. In the newsletter, if you're not on the mailing list, email us at admin@kitsap.org and we can get you all the information. And here's the link. And I think our last part of the agenda is, let's see, let's do this. So we're gonna have agency updates as we normally do at the end. So if you all have an update, put your agency and just say that you have an update and I'll call on you. And then while you're doing that, in the meantime, Corey and Carl, can you do an update from the count?
Yeah, let me jump in here with the point in time count. So it's a month ago, we did our annual Kitsap point in time count, and we had our Project Connect fairs. It seems like that was so long ago already. I want to thank all of the volunteers and all of you that made those, the count and the Project Connect events possible. So, I mean, we had lots of vendors. I appreciate everybody here that came and participated as a vendor at the Connect fairs. want to thank the Project Connect volunteers that were helping to set up the fairs, break it down, and manage it during the time that the events were operating. I want to thank all of our surveyors, both those that were at the Project Connect fairs and at the food banks, and our outreach team partners that were surveying people living outdoors throughout the week. We had 56, let me look here. We had 56 volunteers that participated, giving 333 hours of volunteer time to help perform the count. For our results, we'll have a preliminary point in time count report mid to late March, I would say. Right now, kind of the gut feeling about the number of people that we counted living unsheltered is going to be very similar to what it was last year. Maybe a few more, maybe a few less, but it's going to be very similar. We had, at the Project Connect fairs, we had 277 attendees across all 3 sites. We had 275 the year before. So basically the same number of guests attended Project Connect fairs this year. And then I see that, is there any, so we kind of touched on that there'll be an outreach team meeting later next month. I've got all the forms back. I'm busy doing data entry on that. Still got a long ways to go, and I have to have that done before the end of this month. And then, like I said, hopefully the end of March, we'll be able to push out a preliminary report, kind of comparing this year's count to prior years. Any questions on that real quick? Doesn't sound like it. Carl, did you have any county updates?
Yeah, it looks like I jumped on right in time. The Pacific building, the demo is almost complete. They've torn down all the walls inside. They did find a couple walls that we thought were a little iffy. They're going to have to replace those. But other than that, it came through a lot better than we thought. And we're actually ahead of schedule. So November 2nd is the date for us to open it. So that part is good. We're actually moving forward, helping with the Bremerton shelter. They're still in preliminary talks, but it looks like hopefully it'll be ready early next year, but we'll find out more as we go along. So that's about all I have for the county side.
Thanks, Carl.
Any questions at all?
I don't see any. And it looks like we have 2 updates in the chat right now. So we'll transition to just agency updates. Again, you can raise your hand if you have an update from your agency, or you can put it in the chat and we can call on you. This is just a good opportunity to talk to each other, like if we have shelter beds available, or if we're trying to get a program up. So, forgive me if I don't pronounce your name correctly. Is it Melia, please?
It's Malia, like Maria with an L.
Well, thank you for sharing an update.
Yeah, if you have any questions about DDA housing or just my information is all on that website, and I hope to see people there. The lady that is doing the presenting, Pam Blanton, has a lot of creative ideas to cobble together state and federal resources to find housing for our loved ones that don't necessarily want to live at home, or how to build homes on your own land with funding.
Thank you. And then Michelle with Kitsap Transit.
Hello, yes. So we have about 500 t-shirts that there was a slight mistake that was made. We ordered some 40th anniversary Kitsap Transit t-shirts for all of our employees last year. And there's just, a slight mistake in just the graphics, basically. And so the company remade them for us. And we're now stuck with all of these extra shirts that we're not using. So I just wanted to put that out there. Our executive director would like to give those out to homeless shelters or other agencies that serve those in need. And so I'm going to be sending, Katie, I can send to you a form that we're going to create for those who are interested to let us know and get back to us, and then we can get back to them.
And is it okay?
What's that?
Is this better? Michelle, can you? Is this better? Okay. So can people contact you directly if they're interested, or if they have any?
Yeah, they can contact me directly. I figured that it would be maybe just an easy thing for them just to quickly fill out the form and get it to us so we can kind of keep track of all those, but they're free to just contact me as well.
Thank you so much. For Bremerton Housing Authority, Save My Spot is still a campaign we are running for another 5 days. I wanted to show you on the email that we just sent out the information on that, and want to be here for questions. Now that it's been a month, we've talked a little bit about Save My Spot. Maybe some of you have heard about it a little bit more, but it's to save your spot on the wait list. You just have to fill out a quick form after you log into Rent Cafe, but it's not as easy as it sounds sometimes. So we want to make sure that everybody here is aware of it. So let me share my screen real quick. So I'm at the Kitsap.khc.org website, and this is how I access all our information for our past emails. That's a really great way. So if you go to the archive, information in the middle of the screen, of course, you can sign up for our mailing list to get these emails in real time. But if you go to the archive, you can see all the emails we have sent in the past. And also we have the sections updated as well. So I'm just going to click on the email I just sent today. And then I'm just going to see here. Okay, this is the Save My Spot. So we're just asking all service providers, if you know somebody who might be on the Section 8 wait list, to learn about it more and help them kind of log into their cafe account if they need to Save My Spot. Again, if they don't know if they're on the list, you go to Rent Cafe on our website, and the link is here. Log into BHA Rent Cafe. You can learn more about Rent Cafe in the links. Just make sure that, if we just ask the question, are you on the wait list? Let's check if you're on the list. There will be an option to Save My Spot if they are on the list. They have been sent letters, but again, if they didn't have a great address or things like that, we want to make sure that this information gets out to everyone. Any questions? And we were. Well, thank you so much.
Is that shareable on Facebook, the Save My Spot? Is there something posted, or if not, I'll just create a post.
Yeah, and Fishline also posted something that you could share, and we'll get that shared on our Facebook as well, but not at this second, but there will be. But yeah, make sure to check out our email, and that information can be shared widely.
Hey, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Angela. So on the Rent Cafe application, whatnot, and you're asking for individuals to save their spot, is there a spot to update correct information? Because unfortunately, last time there wasn't when I've tried.
Sometimes you're able to, but sometimes you're not able to. Just depends on where you are. Perfect. So if you're on a wait list, but you're in another unit in our program, you might not be able to update it. It's just based on the application closing some of those options down during the time the wait list has closed. And I do want to put that the wait lists are closed right now. This is just about saving a spot if you have applied and really wait list.
So can I email you about my situation that we've talked about?
Yeah. Again, thank you, everyone. I appreciate all of your time here today. Great information as usual. I know these meetings are long, but we'll try to provide you as much information as we possibly can within these hours that we have together. So thank you, and please submit your nominations for the awards. It's a great opportunity to celebrate each other and everything we've accomplished throughout the year. So, thanks, everyone.